lucky enough today to be with a friend of ours, David McKee. What was your title, David, when you were working?
Well, I was a professor of biology out at A&M Corpus, and when I retired after 28 years, they gave me the title of Professor Emeritus, and really had a lot of fun in my career.
I remember going out there one time when you were doing that necropsy on that damn Mako.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Washing in. I think David was the one who spotted it, wasn't he?
He was, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Right there in front of the beach.
Yeah. Weird.
Beach.
What do you think brought that in? Just sickness?
Yeah, I think so. You know, we had several reports. What's his name out at the Stiffy Poles?
Yeah.
He said they saw one in Corpus Bay and wrapped some monofilament leader around it, and it broke off, and that could have been it, but there was no indication of any line wrapped around it or anything like that. So could have been, but
it was undernourished.
it was, for its weight, it was about a 15-year-old female, and no, surprisingly, and good condition. I mean, the gills were still
I
very.
remember, like you said, there was an oil gland or something in it that was a little bit diminished.
Yeah, or I'd have to pull out the records now. But yeah, you've got a better memory.
No, it's just I remember it because it was something I'd never seen before. You know what I mean? Tell me, so were you born in Corpus?
No, I was born in Sinton, Texas. Very much like Sandifer, who lived about 30 miles inland in Awadilsey. And both of us smelled salt water, and didn't take us long to get to the bays and then eventually the Gulf.
What did your parents do in Sin?
Well, I was raised by a single parent, my mother. I never knew my father, and her parents. And my grandfather was, at the time he retired, he was the oldest sheriff in the history of Texas, and he held office second longest of any. And so we had bloodhounds, and so I kind of raised by my grandparents who were born in the 1800s, and then all the uncles and everything revolved around the seasons, Nick. I mean, at school we had marble season, we had kite season, we had top seasons. Well, we did the same thing with fishing and hunting. And all my uncles and my grandfather walked on water. So I was telling Brenda and Sammy a while ago that I feel like I grew up with a fishing rod in one hand and a BB gun in the other one, just giving Mother Nature holy hell.
Isn't that great?
Trying to figure out how the hell I was going to wrap that deep passion I had as a young man into a career. I mean, the day I got out of high school, I hired on a Gulf shrimp boat, and that was one thing Sandifer and I really were very close on, was that Gulf shrimper life. And what was supposed to be a 3 to 5 day trip, 31 days later we pulled into Houma, Louisiana because of a storm, and I'm ready to get off that boat. These subbitches don't like me. All that was left from that 1957 storm was beer joints. And I thought, I'm going to get a bus out of here back to Lake Charles and get my ass on home. Well, we were tied up. Is it okay to tell a story like that?
I love it.
Okay, all the boats in that part of the Gulf had pulled in there too. So to get from your boat in, you may have to jump across 4 different boats to get on the dock. So the first thing I did was find the telephone and found out that there was a bus that ran 1 day a week, and it had run 2 days ago or something like that. So I thought, oh shit, I got to stay with these subbitches. So, you know, I was a college kid, and these shrimpers, Burl Martin was from Alabama. He had the most redneck voice I've ever heard. I never knew what he was talking about, never did, but he's a great captain. The first boat I was on was the Connie Mack, which was after the very famous baseball player, Woodhull, Gulf King, 73-footer. And the other one was the Southern Pride. Anyway, they hired me on, and we end up over there, and I'm ready to get my ass back. I had a girlfriend. Every day that boat got smaller and that gulf got bigger, and couldn't understand the captain who'd been doing it for 40 years. The rigger was the real interesting one, Walter Williams. I never saw the man completely nude, but there wasn't an inch on him that wasn't tattooed. You know, and this was 1960 whatever. He lived in a burnt out car body up on the rim. Used to be a definite rim around the harbor, and a burnt out car body. That's when he was on land. The rest of the time he was
Tough.
tough son of a bitch, and he mean as hell. Uh, what made me really want to get off the boat was about day 25, I guess. They started screwing with me because they were well. I was doing the best I could, and it just.
How old were you?
I was 18. So anyway, one day we had a bunch of bycatch and we're culling through it, and old Walter comes through. He's always screwing with me, and he fakes a slip on the boat and knocks me off my little culling bench over into the pile of everything, you know, just face down. And I looked around at him, and he went like that. So I thought, son of a bitch, these guys could throw me overboard, blah, blah, blah. So we're in port. I can't get off the goddamn boat. And I just resigned myself to just get drunk like everybody else was. So I'm sitting at the bar next to this guy who is extremely drunk. He's got his head down. He's got beer spilled up in front of him. And every once in a while he goes, whoa, when the barmaid goes by. And it's loud in there. It's a tin building rebuilt after 1957. It's tin, and there's holes cut out for the windows and doors, but no doors or windows. And it's just, the place is rocking. I mean, it is really going down. That Zydeco, that kind of stuff, and people are drunk. There's all kinds of women of the night in there. And anyway, finally, I think I decided this guy wants a beer. Is what he's trying to get the girl. When she walks by, she can't hear him because he's just boom, boom. So I said, next time she came by, I said, ma'am, would you mind getting this gentleman a beer or something to that effect? No sooner than I said that, that son of a bitch came alive and came around and hit me and knocked me over into the dance floor off my stool. He was plenty alive, you know. And next thing I know, there's a big fight breaks out, and the captain, the rigger, and I end up cleaning the place out. I mean, I was a member of that group, and they came in and saved me. We got back to Aransas Pass like 5 days later. We fished some white shrimp on the way back, and I got off that boat, and 2 weeks later, I was back on it again. I mean, it was a brotherhood, you know. It's everything.
I was in the merchant navy, and I used to think it was like being in prison because you were surrounded by a group of people you didn't particularly like, and you're stuck there.
Oh, that's right. Very unsavory characters.
But it was good fun, and you learned a lot.
On land, Walter Williams, the mean tattooed guy, when he got in on that land, he was a totally different guy. He would, of course, he'd spend every bit of forward money that's in and get drunk. And of course, he lived in the car body back in Aransas Pass. And what it was, Walter was very seasick. He had been shrimping 44 years, and the whole time, I mean, he wouldn't throw up, but he just felt like shit.
Right.
And when he got on land, all of a sudden, he was a happy guy. So he really wasn't a mean guy. It's just.
How long did you actually work at the university?
20. Well, I started out there taking classes in 1976.
Now, I'll tell you a funny thing. Well, everyone knows. Like, if you talk to anyone, a young person who's they want to be a marine biologist.
Yes.
So it's an area which I should imagine is overstocked with people wanting to get in.
Yeah.
But it is a well sought after position, isn't it? So you were like, did you do any traveling with it?
Well, let me say something about the popularity of marine biology degree. And yeah, that's one thing we did a very good job of out there, I think, was especially going and making sure these kids knew what they were getting into and knowing that you better have, regardless of your degrees, you better have some experience, you better have people other than your minister that can write things about you. Put down everything that you can that you've done. If you were a Girl Scout, put down you sold the most cookies or whatever you did, and just build it forward. That's what people want to see. But if you want to be a marine biologist and you want to swim with the dolphins, it's, it's not going to happen, you know. Or if you want to be a flipper trainer, you know,
Right.
or you just love animals. I did too, but this is a tough business. And if you're going to do it, you're going to have lots of education, and you're going to have lots of experience. Or you know, that's what that's what that will get you an interview.
Right.
And if you can get that interview, your goal is not to get the job yet; it's to get an interview, so you can sit across the table from the guy that's hiring and say, "Put me in, coach." You know,
Right.
I want
Did you so you began there what when was that in the 60s?
No, 75, but I didn't start teaching there until 1985.
You, have you seen much change in like people talk about global warming and things like this? And I heard like Nueces used to be covered in oil back in the 60s. You could almost set fire to it. So there's been some improvements there.
Oh, yes, yes.
But also on the downside, we've got so many people fishing these days. It's really putting pressure on them, I believe. I noticed in the surf side, there's been some drastic change over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, you know, my thoughts on that are, you know, speaking of New Aces Bay, you know, the work the Bays Foundation has done over there with the little mangrove islands, the oyster restoration work that's soon to start again. You know, freshwater inflows, but those are improvements. But what we can't keep up with is the number of people that are now utilizing the resource and have it to. It's tough to. It's tough enough right now to have, even if they don't fish, to go out there and have a good day.
right.
If they do fish, it's going to be tough to go out there and really have one of those miraculous days like we used to have every other trip sometimes.
So we go down to Yarborough quite a bit. I was down there the other day looking, and that used to be grasses, you know, beautiful. It's all mud now. You know, I don't know if that's a sign of anything, but something's happening. I don't know if them grasses move and come back.
No, well, what we're having around the rim of Corpus Bay, so much erosion, and what's happened because they weren't able to stabilize it. Those high bluffs that used to line the whole bay
Right.
just have eroded out, and then the waves have covered up all the seagrasses.
Do you believe that's because of seawater rising?
No,
No?
I mean initially it was just because land was uh, going away, you know, and being
Right.
deposited out, you know,
Okay.
stabilizing the beach. But the seagrasses used to be very prominent all around the rim of Corpus Bay,
Right.
very much similar to what the boat hole looks like, and back into the upper laguna. But that's the tarpon were very common in the bays.
I heard there was a record. The record time for years apparently was up by Rockport, and then they used to have a good. Some people said there was tarpon in the Nueces, you know, until they built the dams.
Yeah. Well, we've caught a study I did over the years was sampling the Aransas River all the way up to the headwaters, and we caught two tarpon in the Aransas Bay in the Aransas River up near the 77 Bridge,
Wow.
which is like 20 something miles from the bay.
Right.
Both of them were juveniles, But I've always said you're going to catch bass throwing a topwater up against that razor grass, and you may catch those little 3 foot tarpon up in there as well.
Do you think the something I'm always interested in is that they're talking about this freshwater system or desalination plant they're going to be putting in, and if potentially it's going to raise the salinity of the bays. Now, I know Baffin has got a really high salinity, and they've got some of the best fishing there is. So, where's the key there? What's the mix?
Well, what they're talking about is a very concentrated brine, and yeah, desal is a very popular topic right now with especially with the politicians. But you've got to dispose of the brine, and the holdup in Port Aransas is the environmental studies have shown that it would be devastating to allow that to be put into the Lydian.
Yeah,
So put it offshore.
Yeah, they're talking. They want an 8 foot pipe to take it offshore, and it's going to cost like 100 million.
Yeah,
or something.
I mean, there's no easy solutions anymore.
I remember going to islands in the Mediterranean back in the 70s, and they had desalination, and they would sell the salt. They'd have these big flats where they'd get the salt off. I don't know if that's something they'd be considering here at all.
The one that's not making the news right now is this plan. I think it's in the very early stages, but to have a desal plant in the upper Laguna Madre to service the water out on North Padre.
Right.
Yeah, what do you hear about that?
All I'm hearing is what I pick up on the radio when I go in there on a Thursday sometimes. They're talking mainly about the political side of it. I've got concerns over what's going on. I mean, I think the island is rapidly running out of infrastructure to support the population that's currently there. And there's talk about putting roads south.
And putting another...
But to let them build 600 houses and you can't get off the island on a Saturday as it is.
Well, the reason I bring that up is we've got a disposal problem there. We've got two problems. One of them, it works, or you can make it work regardless of what your salinity is, but the higher the salinity, the higher the cost of reverse osmosis. So we've got a double problem down there. They're taking high salinity, hypersalinity water, and going to take the dissolved solids out of it, the salts. And where are they going to dispose of that brine?
Right.
And the King Ranch doesn't want it. The developers over across the way, nor does Penn's want it. So what are you going to do with it? Are you going to pipeline that out into the Gulf? It's just, those are
complex problems.
Very complex.
What I'm concerned about is these massive input of people coming into the area, becoming very popular.
Yeah.
But we're not supporting it with that infrastructure deal as we go ahead. And I know people don't want to spend money on stuff they don't want.
I know. Yeah, your business is very sensitive to that sort of thing. It's all got to work together. We are a destination. We have miraculous hunting and fishing and great open beaches, and but it's
all
we've all got the fear under the gun down south of what the feds are going to do.
I know. I've been
And
drawn on that. I did say that the city council have finally come out today and published somewhere that they're going to they don't want the total programs dropped and they don't want any driving. I don't know what that means, but let's just see what they do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, David has amassed what must be the collection of collections of fishing equipment and stuff that's been used in this area and manufactured in a lot of cases, yeah?
Yes.
And we'd like, if you don't mind, showing us around and tell us what you got.
Well, gosh, I started collecting when I was 12. I've still got lures that I had that I would wade out, swim out to oyster reefs to get the lure, type stuff that I when I first started, and it was very easy when you start back in the '60s to find there's still a lot of old timers around. You can still buy this stuff in the hardware store, and I got to know the some of the old timers, and there are a few of them alive. They were just ornery as everything. They were all like old Poncho, kind of guys, and always like to have a good time. Always happy, smoking cigar, drinking whiskey, and they
Shit, I
they
should have
kind
been
of
a
took
professor.
they kind of they kind of said, and I got the bingo, plug and shorty. I got to know.
Show me this. I mean, this is a typical collection of
Okay,
Charlie
okay.
elephants.
You want? We'll just go from case to
Yeah, go
case.
on.
Okay, I can
Yes.
get real long-winded. This is just what I called my hard plastics case. And by the way, to me, lures stopped being interesting to me about 1970. Anything after that's I call new shit. So some of this is maybe newer than that, but that's just a hard plastic. Just throw kind of like pickup sticks. Throw them down. That's where they land.
One thing that looking at this collection here was it reminded me of when I first started throwing lures in Corpus Christi. We'd always have a little shrimp tail, and that was all you needed.
Yes.
But now the menu is gone off the wall.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
Crazy.
like people are coming, oh, you can't use that colour, it's got to be this. Yeah. Always reminds me of a story of Billy Sandifer and Poncho. Billy was down south, right, and he comes up and sees Poncho fishing by the 39. So Billy gets alongside him and he hadn't caught anything, right? Poncho hadn't. Mm-hmm. So Billy goes, you've got to use this particular lure. Poncho said, Sodom, if I can't catch it on my lure, I don't want them.
There, take that.
Now, tell me about these beautiful bingos.
Okay, this I used to write outdoor columns for the outdoor editor back in the day. Yeah. Roy Swan, he was original, and I wrote one on the Lure Company one Sunday edition, pretty long article. And that afternoon, a drunk calls me up on the phone and says, I read your article, must have a lot of tackle, but I tell you what, you ain't got shit compared to what I've got. Just drunk and slobbering and everything.
Lovely.
So I almost hung up on him. Anyway, he had all kinds of stuff. He's an ex-bandito, lived in a cotton field between Bishop and Driscoll. He'd run a flea market in Kingsville for 30-something years. He was, I said, ex-bandito. He never gave me his name. His name was Clink. That's what it said. And he was dying of lung cancer. So I went to his place. He ended up with lung. Anyway, at the very end, he said, if you'll buy me a six-pack, and he'd already told me he was a recovering alcoholic. He said, if you'll buy me a six-pack, we'll go over by the King's Inn over Rivera. And there's a beer joint there called the Green Frog. And I've got some lures hanging over there. So I bought him, and he said, I like my beer warm. And I couldn't help him on that, but he drank it in about 3 minutes, the whole six-pack, and it was disgruntled all the way over there. So went in, and there was two of these cases on the wall, and I ended up buying this one off the wall on the wall. But when I bought it, the case was open about out here, and people would hang mirror lures and spoons and crap. I didn't know this was behind it until I got home and started peeling off the layers. And it's a Winchester knife box, probably hung in a hardware store back in the 40s. And they said a commercial rod and reeler put this together and hung it in there. And I didn't know that was behind it.
When did they stop making the bingo?
The bingo, these are Sportsman's. This is another company from Corpus, local company. There were 6 that were local, and that's one of them. That's just a bunch of assorted wooden lures over there.
Yeah, I've seen these ones. These are quite popular bass sort of type.
If you look down below, this is one of the few bingo toilet seats. This was made probably in the 60s, and there were only, we don't know, maybe a dozen of them made. But if you're the quintessential bingo collector, and
That's
that took
gotta
me
be
40
it.
something years,
That's got to be it.
and
There's our old
and
mate,
we,
Billy.
yeah, he gave that to me on my 60th birthday.
Right.
And you notice he uses that finger quite a bit.
Yeah, dear old boy.
We were just goofing around up there one time.
He was a star, Billy.
Oh,
I was given a load of hooks like this, which I made a fish out of. They were Mexican longline hooks.
yeah.
These ones up here, I think, similar.
These are Fluger Sobies.
Okay.
And the name of that is, this is for one of my grandkids. These are fish hooks I used as a boy, and wow. I had the 16-aughts and fished the piers and the jetties and all that stuff. And
this is awesome. Now the beauty of having all this, is doing a lot to get a museum going, aren't you? It's valuable really to this area.
Yeah, well, here's the story on the museums. I had one that ran for 20 years down at the Corpus Christi Science and History Museum. It's supposed to be permanent, and they took it down, and I can't get anything back. It'll never be up again.
That's so wrong.
So they weren't interested in this, and I wasn't interested already in having anything here. It's a shame that the companies were Corpus, but the museum's going to be in Port Aransas. That's okay. And then I had one that I curated at the Texas Maritime Museum in Rockport, and it was still running current. It had grown a lot, but Harvey took the roof off of it, and they're back open. I talked to the new director over there, who's a maritime archaeologist, and he said there will be no fishing. We're going to have one rod and reel in there that somebody's donated, an old wooden one. It's going to be all maritime artifacts, which is okay. But Port Aransas, I went and I knew the people, but just never thought of them. And they said, we built this 12,000 square foot place in the form of the old original Coast Guard station that was built in the 1870s. And we'd like to do fishing. What have you got? So I had the board of directors come over here and said, well, this is what I got. And I've still got stuff in boxes, but it came together.
I'm so glad you're doing that. I've been wanting some of these washed up one year. Now, isn't that strange? I've never seen them again since.
I have not either.
I've got a couple of them.
Tony, you know what causes that?
No, I've got no idea.
Tony Amos figured it out. He took one apart and studied the filaments and all that. And it's just marine debris out of the bays, very fine vegetative matter that gets washed around in the first three guts, and it just concentrates them into a ball.
Mine's got fishing line in it and everything.
Yeah, so whatever.
But it only happened like I've known it twice.
I know. Everything's got to be aligned, I guess. Look at this. Back in the day when I was a kid.
I've seen fishermen actually doing this.
But if that's bingo.
Oh, it's got bingo.
And you were a field tester. You got one of those. Those guys were. I can remember them. Holy Grail. I mean, you just go, God, what fishing in the bays with bingos and shrimp, and they always came in with nice stringers of fish. So, because of the salesmanship some of these bait company owners had, they were in the 50s and 60s. They had salesmen on the road out of Corpus Christi, 24/7, hitting all 5 Gulf states and going all the way around Florida and up to the Carolinas selling Corpus lures. And Doug English, the owner of Bingo, said, I probably gave away as many lures as I sold, but which wasn't the case at all. But he said, I'd give them away to anybody I'd see fishing. I'd give them a lure. And I said, I'm going to give you this, and I want you to yell bingo every time you catch a fish on it. And the word was soon all you could hear was bingo, bingo.
Goliath Crew, who's that up there with that?
That's Florida Roberts, Port Aransas.
And this gentleman down here?
This is my mentor, Dr. Henry Hildebrand. Okay. He started marine biology here in 1957 out here on Ward Island.
There was a I interviewed for a story I was writing about mullet, and he was a sea captain at Port A, but he was a marine biologist as well. Short, stocky chap. Maybe he'd be in his 80s, 90s now. But Billy put me on to him. But that was the most controversial thing I ever wrote about, was where did mullet go, right? He was convinced they'd go offshore.
Well, that's
right. But there's another train of thought where they go down the coast and into a bay in Mexico somewhere. So
I'm not familiar with
I've often wondered why no one's done any research on that particular problem, considering it's one of the main.
Good question. You know, until something really gets in reaches a certain category of being in a problem, there's never any money thrown towards it. And oftentimes when you do see a problem, it's oftentimes too late. And what you're dealing with on top of that is probably diminished water quality, more people using the water now, so forth. So it's hard, especially now, to wait to that point.
See,
but mullet are, very, very abundant.
We didn't have a mullet run, right? We did, but it had gone offshore. With the cold fronts coming through, with the north winds, or whenever that happens, then mullet move off, right? Well, we started to find dead pelicans on the beach this year, many of them. Like 5 a trip.
I remember reading
right?
about that. Yeah.
Now, I think it was because they were starving, because they couldn't dive down because they were too young.
Were those tissues tested to see if
no one I knew did any testing.
I think that was widely known. I knew about it, and that somebody took tissue samples and were going to look for mercury or
right. I was convinced it was because they were all young ones, that they hadn't learned the skill of diving deep enough. Just like a young skimmer learns to skim.
Well, that could certainly.
Now there was a.
All right, so that could happen. Yeah.
David, you've got. I need to come back here and do another one with you sometime, if you don't mind.
What we're going to do with some of these at the museum, one of the women on the board over there said, let's make, for the gift shop, let's make these into jigsaw puzzles. Some of these cases.
Oh, good idea. Take a photograph.
And
that is a good idea.
All you can. This isn't a good example, but my daughter did one of these cases for me, and it comes out. This is 1,200 pieces. So they want to sell these in the bookstore or the gift shop.
Great idea.
Yeah, it's an awesome idea. I want one.
Yeah.
So, are you a puzzle one? I don't have the patience anymore. I did when I was.
My daughter and her fiance love puzzles. Yeah.
This is a treasure trove of just the local history of this place. It's just, and there's a very important one. Look, a breakaway.
A breakaway. Look at the name on the breakaway.
It's got Billy Sandoval
on it. Yes, it does. Yeah.
Backcaster as well.
And got long handle and short handle.
You know, I was at a seminar where Billy was talking, and he goes, Friar Rogers, speak to him. But if you want to know how to catch fish, you speak to me.
He was quick.
Oh, he was. Quick. Can we go in there and have a look?
Yeah, let's move it. Can I get y'all anything to drink?
I'm fine.
Tea, water.
No, you're great. I want to come back and do more of what you've got. Sometime where we just talk about the lures.
Yeah. Well.
Now this rod, I was able to give you that, wasn't I?
You gave me that.
Yeah, and that was by Big Lou McKee, who's related to you.
Yeah. Well, only by marriage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have any relatives over in Argenta area?
Yes, the Hunts.
Okay. Did you, Brenda, come here. You got to film this.
Oh, Argenta. They were sharecroppers out there.
Right. Okay, so you had relatives in Argenta.
Yes, my grandfather's side came from there when they came down from Gee whiz, Williamson County, I think.
All right. So
Liberty Hill.
maybe 10 years ago, we held a casting tournament in Argenta. Big Lou McKee turns up and said this is where his relatives were from
Yes,
Argenta. There was a little schoolhouse.
That's where those families split.
Right,
yeah,
now here's an interesting thing I want the answer on, right? There was a lady they called the Green Lady. And so I went to a party over there once, and I was talking to someone. I said, Argenta. I said, do you know the Green Lady of the Green Lady? Oh, yes. They all knew her. I said, well, how green was she? And he pointed to a leaf, and he said, as green as that. Now, it must be one of your relatives. And I'm not sure which one, but that's a gospel truth. And that was Cotton Porter. His father, the Porters owned that land out there. And he was the one who told me the story of it.
Ah, well.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Lou is a good dude.
Oh, Lou's
he's just puppy dog.
Yeah. Big old puppy, lovely dog.
Yeah.
I've spent many good time. Now, here's interesting. They're not made out of oyster shell.
And that one, I think, with the hardware on it, was turn of the century.
Wow.
That's and that will rival today's holographics.
Yeah. Could you tell me what about they used to use a leaf as well, didn't they, on the sail lines? What was that?
Yeah, they use an oak leaf. It has oak that leaf? And oleander.
That was it. Yeah. Now, didn't they make that illegal at one time?
Yeah. That was. And using carrots and just a piece of wooden dowel as a bait. But the oleander leaves and the oak leaves. That was more over in the Rockport area than over here in the Upper Laguna Madre. That's a Pico lure company here in Corpus. Padre Island Company is what Pico stands for. That's the old Pico perch.
Yeah.
Anybody that's ever caught bass in Texas probably started out with a Pico perch.
They had a similar technique to bingo, didn't they? They were using that same resin trick.
Yeah. They mimicked each other. Right. They kept up with each other. This is the hump lures. This started here in Corpus in 1953. It moved to El Campo, and there were. The deal here was don't get bumps, catch fish with humps.
Love it.
And they were fish by numbers, fish with humps. So they go from 0 to 28. This is a complete set. It took me 40 years to put this together.
Beautiful.
There's only maybe 4 sets, maybe 5, and I've got 2. I've got 2 complete sets. I just found that just so cool.
I wonder if it's an antenna rod.
Is that? I can't even remember what the. No, that's wood.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's
but I have those saber.
Yeah.
Lots of those steel rods.
Mm-hmm. I'll give you a couple.
You did. Yes.
David, I've got to go, but I would like to thank you on behalf of everyone. You're awesome. And I'd like to come back and get some more info off you sometime.
Please come back, all of you. Maybe we can do it over a beer or something like that. Brenda?
Look at this beautiful place.
This is lovely.
Sweetheart.
So much interesting stuff.
Well, my wife puts up with it. When I found out I was getting the museum space over there, found a home, I was happy. She was happier than I was because I've just invaded a lot of her space.
Well,
Well, thanks a lot, mate.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it.